everyone and welcome back to Lewis News, your #1 YouTube channel for all types of Spider-Man news, and we're back, baby. We're back with the longer form content. Yes, I'm going to be making longer form content from now on. The shorts didn't really work out, but it was an experiment. Obviously, we're still in the early phases of the channel, so we're going to be doing experiments here and there, but most of you guys, and surprisingly, about 90% of you guys, wanted the longer form videos back, so here we are with the longer form videos, and today we have some really big news, and I'm glad we came back on this note because this is something really interesting to talk about, is that Spider-Man Noir is actually going to be getting his own show on Amazon Prime, just like the Silk TV show that Phil Lord and Christopher Miller will be producing. They're also going to be producing this Spider-Man Noir TV show, but essentially, this TV show will follow an old and grizzled superhero who won't be Peter Parker, which is interesting. We'll come back to that in just a second, and it will be set in the 1930s. And most interestingly, I'd say, is it will be in its own universe. Now, there's a lot to unpick here. There's a lot to talk about, so let's get straight into it. Let's first talk about the fact that it will be in its own separate universe, and we'll come on to him not being Peter Parker a little bit later on in the video. So, obviously, with it being in its own universe, that means it's not in the Sonyverse. Does this mean that Silk is also set in its own universe? I don't know. There's a lot of questions to be asked here because, as we do know, interconnected universes are the rave in Hollywood nowadays. Everything is connected, everything is a universe, everything's getting a spin-off. Ever since the MCU became popular, other studios are capitalizing on doing an interconnected universe. Possibly one of the more popular examples being DC, and one of the more obvious examples, Star Wars is also another example of expanding your universe past the main line of movies. We also have something called the Dark Universe, which, if you guys remember, that was a flop by Universal, which was meant to be this mystical, magical universe based off old mythical stories and zombies and vampires and all that kind of stuff. That actually flopped, but because of the MCU's success, they actually decided they were going to make their own universe. Obviously, it didn't work out, but there are many examples out there, whether it's failed or it was successful, out in Hollywood, that kind of follow this mold that the MCU has created when it comes to interconnected universes. And I guess my point is that the audiences will be confused. Is this connected to the Sonyverse? Is this connected to Silk? I have no idea. My main theory, though, however, is that I think they're probably going to be building up some kind of Spider-Verse, kind of multiversal thing with all these different shows and all these different movies. And I think eventually they're going to culminate them together in live action. We know we're getting Madam Web, so we are introducing the multiverse for the Sonyverse characters. Obviously, we're also getting Spider-Man villains as well, like Craven. But overall, we're going to be getting a lot of Spider-based projects like Silk, like Madam Web, and now obviously Spider-Man Noir. So, are they going to be bringing them all together in a multiversal project? Probably. So does it make sense that they are separated in different universes? Yes, it does. I just think the audiences could potentially be confused if they don't convey it in the proper way. Also, another pro about them being in different universes is that they can really explore the world of Spider-Man Noir in the 1930s without having to tie it back to the larger Sonyverse. Because obviously, Spider-Man Noir is a very different universe in comparison to the 616 comic line. And similar to how Matt Reeves' Batman can actually be separate from the main DC universe, and he can have more creative freedom with what he does with Gotham, what he does with the story and the characters. The same thing goes with this project right here with Spider-Man Noir. So I think that is very interesting. But, however, another big talking point about this is that the main character won't actually be Peter Parker, which I think is really, really weird because Spider-Man Noir literally is Peter Parker. However, Christopher Miller, who is actually producing the show, came out and said that anyone can wear the mask, akin to what the message was in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, obviously relaying that there are multiple Spider-Men, there are multiple Spider-Women that do in fact wear the mask. Who is going to be Spider-Man or the main superhero that will appear in Spider-Man Noir when it does eventually come out? Well, there are a bunch of people that it could be that haven't ever showed up in live action before. And now what I think Sony is doing here, going back to the multiversal theory and the multiversal concept, is that when they eventually do bring these characters together, which looks like they are going to be doing, because I think it's fairly obvious now with Madam Web, etc., and all the multiverse stuff happening with the MCU, I do think that when they bring them together, they will have different characters. And what I mean by that is one person will be Peter Parker, one person will be Madam Web, another person will be Ben Reilly, for example, another person will be Jessica Drew. And when they pull all of these live action Spider-Men and women from all of these different shows, these different movies, and all in from these different universes into one colossal event, it'll be easy to distinguish as an audience who is who because they will all be different characters. And if they are to bring them into one massive crossover multiversal movie, which I very much think they will, considering it's Sony and, you know, it would be a missed opportunity if they weren't to, it is a very clever idea because then you don't have to distinguish them as Peter or Gwen or Miles, whatever. They can just be Miles, Gwen, Peter, Ben Reilly, Madam Web, etc. And it'll make things so much easier for the studio, for the audiences. And for those of you that are saying that Spider-Man Noir could be Peter Parker, obviously we don't actually have a Peter Parker in the Sonyverse yet. Well, the thing is, if this is to happen, the Peter Parker in that multiversal movie, if it is to happen, would be Tom Holland's Spider-Man more than likely. He's the more established Spider-Man. He would bring in the most money. And, you know, why would Sony cast another person to be Peter Parker when they've got one right in front of them? Or it could be Andrew Garfield. Who knows? But anyway, back to Spider-Man Noir. It won't be Peter Parker. Who is it going to be? Well, there are a few options. It could be Ben Reilly, for example. That would be pretty interesting. Maybe they do a little spin where technically it's Peter Parker, but he renames himself Ben Reilly because, you know, maybe he commits a crime. Maybe he has to escape. Maybe he's got a little bit of an identity thing going on. It would fit really nicely with the dark and gritty tone of the 1930s story. Maybe potentially it's Uncle Ben as Spider-Man, just throwing that idea out there if they want to spice things up a little bit. I don't know, it could literally be anyone. I don't know much more about it at this moment in time, but if you guys want to stay updated with this show and want to stay updated with all types of Spider-Man stuff, make sure you're subscribed because this is your #1 Spider-Man channel on YouTube for all of the news, the games, the movies, and the shows. Literally everything we cover on the channel. Make sure you're subscribed, make sure to leave a like, hit the bell, and yeah, tell me what you think in the comment section down below. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care, and peace.